Hi, and welcome to our May meeting of the Western Pennsylvania Mushroom Club. I'm Stephen Buckland, the club's current president. Thanks for being here. Here's some updates on our club's activities in the past month. Everyone should have received their copy of the May-June newsletter. And in here, you'll find articles on all of our upcoming meetings, walks, events, and stuff like that, including Die Day and our annual link-off foray. There's also a really great article on eyelash cap mushrooms by one of our past presidents, Richard Jacob. And there's a lot of other goodies in the newsletter as well. So definitely recommend checking it out. It should be in your mailbox or inbox, and you can find it on our website as well. And just a reminder that submissions are always welcome to the newsletter. And if there's something you'd like to contribute, just reach out to Cecily Franklin, who is the editor. In terms of in-person walks since our last meeting in April, we've had three different in-person walks. First up was April 25th at Riverview Park, and that was hosted by the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy. Jim Tunney, Kara Coulter, and myself were on the books as identifiers for that walk, but we ended up having 3 club mycologists and 3 club identifiers present for that walk. So we had more identifiers than participants, I think, by the end of the walk. It's kind of fun. We also had a walk April 30th at Devil's Hollow, and that was hosted by Allegheny Land Trust. So Julie Travellini and Fluff Berger were the identifiers for that. And yeah, this was kind of a kickoff event for the City Nature Challenge. So participating in this walk definitely helped get some more observations up on iNaturalist to boost our fungi stats. Also the same weekend, the next day, May 1st at Braddock's Trail Park. This was a pop-up walk hosted by Richard Jacob. And I saw 3 species of morels in the species list from that walk. So could be a good spot to go look next spring. But yeah, like I said, both of those were part of the City Nature Challenge. Here's some of our stats for the Pittsburgh region. We had 143 people contribute observations of fungi during this year's challenge, and we had at least 137 species documented. So that's a new record for Pittsburgh during the City Nature Challenge. In every metric, we saw growth compared to last year, even though overall there were fewer people participating this year compared to last year. So I think the love for fungi is alive and well and continuing to grow. And that's just really awesome to see. This wasn't a walk, but there was a film screening at the Tull Family Theater of a movie called The Truffle Hunters. And on May 7th, Barb DeRizzo gave a presentation before the screening. And then our sales chair, Aaron Gahn, was there selling merchandise, and Jim Wasik was there sharing information about the club. And I was there too, just kind of hanging out. And in terms of virtual programs, Kara released a video on morels in the past month. That was pretty good. And I did a webinar on spring mushrooms that aren't morels, because I feel like people talk a lot about morels and not about the other spring fungi. So just trying to spread some love for the other species. In terms of upcoming walks, here's some events with Allegheny Land Trust. On May 23rd, there will be a walk at Barking Slopes. June 9th at Gertie's Woods. July 16th, there will be a beginner's walk at Bethel Green, and July 31st at Sycamore Island. All of the walks are free except for Sycamore Island, because you have to get a boat ride over to the island. So the cost helps cover renting that boat so that we can get to and from the island. But yeah, Julie Travellini is going to be leading all of these walks with some help from identifiers from the club. I think I'll be helping out on the 23rd, Kara will be helping on the 9th, and Lamont will be helping on the 31st. And you can register for those at AlleghenyLandTrust.org/events. And Julie, add stuff in the chat if I forgot anything. Some other upcoming walks and events. On June 6th is the FIPS BioBlitz. That's going to be taking place in and around Shenley Park. And that's going to be an all-day event with many themed walks. There's advanced registration for all of the walks. I think it's limited to 10 participants per walk. So if you're interested in trees or insects or other things, you should check out their website and see if there's a couple walks you want to sign up for. I'll be leading a couple walks that day that don't focus on fungi, but Richard Jacob is going to be leading a walk at 2 p.m. That focuses on mushrooms. And I think Jim Tunney and Lamont are going to be helping staff a table where you can bring any mushrooms you've been finding to get identified, or just hang out and learn about what folks have been finding in the park that day. And then on June 19th is the annual Dorothy Fornoff Walk. And that'll start at 10 a.m. and we'll meet in the parking lot between the first two small lakes as you are coming into the park. And there's no pre-registration for that event. But yeah, there are going to be more walks announced as we start to get into summertime, and just check our events tab on the website for the latest info. All right, this is just a reminder of our monthly meeting schedule and what our topics are. And we are still planning to resume in-person meetings in August. So hopefully we'll be doing our cultivation meeting in person at Beechwood Farms. In terms of some of our larger events this year, Dye Day is going to be on Saturday, August 21st. And that's going to be with Judy McEnroth, who is an expert dyer. She's going to show us how to dye with mushrooms. No experience is necessary, but space is limited and registration is required. There will be a morning introduction and mushroom walk, which are free to attend. And the afternoon session, it costs $10. And if you're planning on staying for both, we recommend packing a lunch. To register for Dye Day, you can go to our website, go to the events tab, and then scroll through the list there until you find the listing for Dye Day, and click on that. And then you'll find a form there where you can input your name and pay the $10 registration fee. Our other large event this year is the Gary Linkoff Memorial Foray. And this is going to be a 3-day event. Friday, we'll be at Cook Forest, a bit north of Pittsburgh, for a pre-foray walk. Saturday is the main event. And that's the event that you have to register and pay for. And then Sunday, we'll have workshops focusing on identifying some of the mushrooms that we found the day before, and learning some skills like microscopy and stuff like that. Registration for the main event is $60 for non-members, $40 for members, $25 for students, and free for children 10 and under. Science Sunday is going to be $20 per person. And registration for all of that stuff is live on our website now, I believe. So yeah, our speakers this year are going to be Leon Chernoff and Michael Kuo. Leon's the editor of Mushroom, the Journal of Wild Mushrooming, and Michael is the developer of mushroomexpert.com. So really excited to be bringing them both to Pittsburgh to speak for the club this fall. And here's our membership report. Since our last meeting, we've gained 36 members. So thanks so much to all of our members, new and old, for supporting the club. I believe this is a new record for membership numbers for our club, but I could be wrong. And for folks who are maybe watching the recording of this and who aren't already a member, dues are $15 for an individual, 20 for a family, and 10 for a student. You get all of these benefits listed here, plus more. You'll get our bi-monthly newsletter, updates on our walks and events, a discount on your registration fee for the link-off foray, and you'll be entitled to a mushroom grow kit at our cultivation meeting in August if we're able to host it in person. Another program we have is our Button ID program, and it recognizes club members who can identify different species of fungi. Buttons are awarded at the 10, 25, 50, 75, 100, 150, and 300 level. Members can submit their list for verification to the email listed here. And we don't have any new awards for tonight's meeting, but hopefully we'll have some at the next meeting. And if you're interested in learning to identify more species of fungi, whether it's to earn your next mushroom ID button or purely for joy, I'd encourage you to stick around after the speaker tonight to join our mushroom ID session. So you can bring pictures of any fungal finds you'd like to have identified, and our expert identifiers will share what they know and help you learn how to identify those mushrooms. So we kind of just hang out and share pictures and talk about what people have been seeing. But pictures from the past are always welcome as well. All right, next month's meeting, we're going to be welcoming Dr. Kristen Wickert, who will be presenting a talk called Fungi as Plant Pathogens. Plant pathology is like a giant puzzle with many different pieces that tell a story about our ecosystem's health. Fungi are commonly an important piece in that puzzle. Dr. Kristen Wickert is a forest plant pathologist who specializes in the fungi of our eastern forests. She's going to highlight some of the obvious and not so obvious fungal players that are influencing our forest composition. Dr. Wickert has a bachelor's degree in forest biology from Penn State, as well as a master's and doctoral degrees in forest plant pathology from West Virginia University. So I think that's going to be a really awesome meeting. I'm really excited to meet Kristen and learn some more about fungal plant pathogens. All right, does anyone have anything else to share with the group before I introduce tonight's speakers? I think I can.
There's a question in the chat about the walks, and they're new. They said that if a mushroom walk doesn't have a registration link, does that mean you just show up? Do you always need to register? And the link just isn't up yet. Do you understand that? I don't know the answer.
I think it depends on who's hosting the walk. If it's hosted by the Mushroom Club, then there will either be registration on our website or there won't be. If it's hosted by another organization like Allegheny Land Trust or the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy or Phipps Conservatory, then their website would be where to look for registration. And perhaps, I think it's usually listed in the listing on our website. Like I was looking at the FIPS BioBlitz listing on our website earlier today, and there's a link to FIPS's website to register there. So Richard's usually pretty good at including links to registration if it's outside of just the club. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, anything else? Awesome. Well, without further ado, I will introduce our speakers tonight. So we're really excited to welcome Tosca and Andrei from Nanotopia. So Tosca is an interdisciplinary artist working at the intersection of art and ecology. She started collaborating artistically with algae, Phacerum polycephalum, which is a slime mold, and mycelium in 2016, translating biodata from non-human organisms into music, and dragged Andrei along for the ride into the mycelium network. So these two are the visionaries of Nanotopia, a project that sees them constructing soundscapes and installations involving biodata sonification of fungi. Tonight, they're going to present a little bit about some of their past and upcoming projects and how they came to work intimately with fungi. They're also going to give us a little bit of a behind the scenes look at what their collaborative composition process looks like and perform a little piece of music for us. So I think at this point, I can stop sharing my screen and pass things over to Andrei and Tosca.
Hey, hi. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting us, Stephen and Garrett. It's pretty exciting to be able to share everything. I don't know if everybody, can you hear me? I just saw somebody holding their ear, so I wasn't sure. But just let us know if you can hear us. We're not muted, but I don't know. Anyways, hard to hear? Do I need to talk like that? Oh no. Okay. So I'll essentially have this microphone kind of in my mouth. We're going through the mic because of how we have our mixer hooked up to the computer and things like that for the sound piece that we'll be sharing with you in a bit. So we're going to give you like a presentation, pretty short-ish, of kind of some past work, then when we came together, and the work, like the collaborative things that we've been doing since. And so with that, I'm going to share my screen. So let me know, this should work. Okay. All right. So I'm Tosca Terán, as you know, and I might, oops, I've got to like stop this. And Andrei Gravelle. And so we're both coming to you from Toronto, Canada right now, but I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area. And I don't know if you guys can see that really well over here. It's kind of cut off. But so I grew up just north of San Francisco, and something that really ties into my life later is that my father was a really huge audiophile, big into music. Obviously, my name is Tosca. He was into opera and things like that, but also electronic music. And that, as a little kid, hearing all these albums from Tamita and Klaus Schultz and, of course, Pink Floyd, really kind of had a huge influence on my work. And I never really considered that until later. And also, I was really into sciencey things and trying to, make strange chemicals out of my mom's perfumes and stuff. So they bought me a microscope and a chemistry kit. But I grew up in Larkspur, Corte Madera, under Mount Tamalpais. So this is Mount Tam, and it's pretty famous for having muir woods, giant redwood forest on top of it, and just some of the mushrooms that you can find there. And so this is Larkspur. And on the other side is the Pacific Ocean, if you're not familiar, and Stinson Beach and things like this. But I would later in my 20s relocate to New Mexico, and in particular in Taos. Lots of adobe. And so while I was in Taos, amongst all the other things I did, I really got into kind of adobe architecture. And I bring that up for myself anyways, and to tie in some of the mushroom things, is thinking about it now, how much adobe is very similar to me as working with substrates and mycelium towards biomaterials, and especially with earthship architecture. And so I should mention too, Cobb kind of construction is Cal Earth architecture, if any of you are familiar with that, and Nadir Khalili's work is just really fantastic. And I think that, there's lots of 3D structures that are now being built very similarly. You can just do it with your hands. But I think of using substrates this way too.
Hello, and this is Andrei here. In spite of growing up in Ottawa, our nation's capital, I had a very close proximity to nature, because just across the Rideau River in Ottawa is the province of Quebec, and there's Gatineau Park, a very nice like forested area. And with my family, when I was a kid, we would frequently go on weekends and gather what we called specimens, and rocks and plant materials and fungus. And so that in a way was my first sort of real experience with being connected to nature. The inspiration for a lot of my interests later in life were actually all present in my childhood. My mother was a piano teacher and taught lessons at home. We had a baby grand piano, and oddly enough, I never to this day formally learned how to play the piano. But much to my mother's dismay, and sort of as a sign of what was to come in terms of my musical tastes, I would put a very heavy book down on the damper pedal, and then I would pluck or scrape at the strings, or even just yell into the sounding board just to hear my voice resonate as if it was into a giant cavern. My father worked for Radio-Canada as a broadcaster, and he would often bring a tape recorder home for us kids to play with, although most of the time we would just unravel magnetic tape all over the place. But at the age of 6, I got my first tape recorder, and I was delighted to find this middle image online. That's exactly the model I had at the age of 6. It had 3 speeds. So at that age, I was already recording things and playing things back at different speeds, so I could hear what it sounded like. And it was a lot of fun, and playing things backwards. And then at the age of 12, I was given a 151 electronics kit, exactly like the one illustrated here. And all my favorite circuits were all the ones that made funny bleepy bloopy noises. Supposedly I was making burglar alarms and stuff, but I think I was really making like theremins and my first synthesizer. So that was all very exciting. In terms of study, I went to Carleton University briefly for music. Then I studied recording engineering at Fanshawe College in London, Ontario. And while I was studying at Fanshawe, I played in numerous bands that ended up like touring around Ontario. And from there, I went to Montreal to work as a recording engineer for a few years. And then I sort of got caught up in a lot of distractions. I got involved with live theater, doing sound design as well as technical support. I dabbled in photography, and ultimately moved to Toronto and somehow drifted into film. And currently I'm the senior technical manager of the Toronto International Film Festival. The funny thing for me about film is that for music, the kind of music I really like to make and I like to listen to is very much like a soundtrack. It's about creating a sense of space, a sense of going somewhere. same with photography. It's like an image that will inspire you to think outside of where you are currently. And film was just this magic medium in terms of combining sort of everything together. And so my involvement with film festivals meant that I would often travel to other film festivals, and that's how I met Tosca.
So we met in Taos at the Taos Talking Picture Festival, which is sadly no longer alive. But while it was an incredible documentary style film festival. So Andrei and I met, and I left the States and I migrated to Canada to become a Canadian. And so we started full on collaborating together. And one of our very first works, I guess I should say, I relocated to Canada in 2001. And so this was our first installation together. And so my background is really like metalsmithing and working with glass and just a lot of sculptural types of things. And so Andrei would usually create like a soundscape for these odd devices or sculptures that I would make. So transgenic morphosis was a concept of where you're in a distant dystopian future looking back at maybe 50 years, let's say from 2003, or maybe 100 years, and you're looking at this discarded, strange tech that's broken down and things like that. So we created the soundscape, and we had different actors and people like recite things in different languages that would pertain to our strange non-invasive implants. And then Orbis Tertius was another installation where I created kind of my view of cybernetic organisms or internal organs, and they were all made out of metal, and some of them were glass. I had an MRI of a heart that was playing, and again, it was another instance where Andrei created this incredible soundscape for it. Sometimes I would loan like maybe some field recordings for these soundscapes. And then there's Techni. So this is a device, it's a picture here under body bus of Andrei wearing it's kind of a joke because this would be a very invasive implant, but it's another non-invasive implant. And so MIDI would connect to you, and you would send images back and forth from your friend who might wear another aspect. You can see here on the left side of the screen, there's a tiny I don't really have a pointer, and I don't know if you can see my cursor. Probably, I don't know if you can, but I'm circling like this little like cell. So you would wear this, and this is actually a camera that would transmit like your location to the person wearing this, and you could see it on this little screen. And so the MIDI is kind of the sound input there. And like we did a lot of things with the Design Exchange in Toronto. Would do these different festivals every year. And this one was based on the entity, which is in a way looking like a radiolarian or like a diatome. But it was a hearing device, so you could hold it up to your ear and you would hear these strange sounds. And this was to take place at Toronto's Historic Distillery District. And then I think what really kind of started, I mean, I've always been into mushrooms and fungi, but I think this one really kind of took off for Andrei and myself as far as really creating soundscapes that I kind of would interpret in the work, and Andrei vice versa, like Andrei would look at the work. So this was kind of my take on cordyceps fungi. So I made my own kind of genus. And so these are all kind of wearable rings, and they showed at Urban Glass. So I have a piece of the soundscape here that I'd like to play for you. Maybe just a part of it that goes with this. So let me know, like nod, I can see some of you if you can hear it. Sorry about that. Did I just like cut out for a minute? Sorry. Okay, so sorry about that. I minimized the screen by accident. Okay. So, so then around that same time, I'd say with the unnatural history and creating these fungi forums and stuff like that, I was growing like gourmet mushrooms, and that was a lot of fun. You know, it's totally a lot of fun because gourmet mushrooms are amazing. And I was starting to look at different workshops at working with different things like algae and slime mold. So Physarum polycephalum, the many-headed slime. I took this workshop with a person that's very into him here. Her name is Sarah Shuka, and she kind of suggested I look at working with Physarum polycephalum as my way of working with a non-human like alien. And just for some reason, the concept of working with an alien life form just completely blew my mind. And I thought, oh my God, the mushrooms I'm growing and working with this slime mold. So with slime mold, we would do like a lot of mazes, and you can make where you can kind of suggest that the slime mold would make connections to make music, but they really do their own thing. And I started looking at different electronics, as Andrei kind of mentioned, with making things in their youth that would buzz and make sounds. So we would do that quite often too, like come up with these different schematics or find something online. And so here, with the monophonic moss piglet, you would touch these two connectors here where this arrow is, and this little buzzer would happen. And I started wondering, like, would I be able to somehow figure out how to hook this up to mushrooms and hear them, or could they trigger that buzzer? And it's very much like I don't know if they sell them in the States. They're these little chicks you can buy around Easter, and you touch these two connectors on the bottom and they make this really creepy little yeah, it's really creepy because they usually they reskin them in October to look like little bats or like little Draculas, but they're still making that same peeping sound. It's very strange, but they're cool. You touch these two connectors and they make that sound. So anyways, from a lot of research and Googling, I came upon different images. I didn't really know, what am I looking for? I know that there are microphones that exist that, can pick up incredible frequencies that just are outside of our human hearing. But gaining access to these things, it was next to impossible for me. Either they're over in Europe somewhere or they're sitting in a lab and only, the researchers that are working with them can get a hold of them. But it was during that I, instead of looking for mushrooms, I typed in plants. Like is somebody listening to the sounds of plants? And lo and behold, Sam Kusumano appeared. And Sam is pretty amazing. He has Electricity for Progress, is his site, and he worked for a company called Data Garden. And Data Garden, I don't really recall what year it was, but they did a Kickstarter for what's called the MIDI Sprout. This was totally past MIDI Sprout time, and to be honest, the MIDI Sprout at that time was really outside of my price range to be able to justify buying one. I didn't know if it would work or not. So I found a person in Germany named Manuel Domke who was selling he had grabbed the schematic because it is open source from Sam, the MIDI Sprout, and he had the schematic and he had the Arduino code. So he had made his own boards, and we'll show you one after our presentation, kind of what they look like if you're unfamiliar. But so he sold me a board and some of the components. So I put one together, and I was telling Andrei all about it. Like, I'm going to put these electrodes on this mushroom, and we're going to hear a sound. Andrei's like, didn't really believe me. I didn't really believe it. I was very skeptical of myself. And so this is from a bag of mushrooms, some mycelium I was growing at the time. And when I placed, this is probably actually the third time because the first time we were so blown away. And then I decided we have to record this and share this on SoundCloud. Like, oh my gosh, the sounds of all kinds of different fungi. So I'll play this. It's very bizarre. So what I found was when you would touch the mycelium, you could hear in the immediate like changes happen. There, you know, what I was doing, and then I realized I shouldn't be doing that. I was putting a UV light all over the mycelium just to hear the changes. And so I started to hook up all kinds of different mushrooms, and I would, you know, stay within the same parameters of how I was listening to it or recording it in through the iPad, just to be able to see, you know, would they sound differently. And so I was very fortunate and received some residencies to be able to travel around Iceland and live there for a bit. So I went through the moss fields, and they have a lot of fungi there. And up in Skagastrand, where this image is of these people sitting, they like this. Actually, this person here is Magnusson was the mayor of Skagastrand, and he absolutely did not believe me at all that he was listening to mushrooms. But then when he touched this bag, yeah, he was pretty blown away. And so these are the different places, kind of some of them on the map that I'm showing of where I had gone and collected sounds. And so, and we're going to talk about how exactly this board is working and how it's picking up these sounds and how it's translating them too. And I also, just a little thing here, I don't know if you can see that, but I got to work with Arctic foxes too, and that was pretty cool. So then in 2018, I thought it would be really great for Nuit Blanche, which is a 24-hour art event that happens in Toronto. It also happens in Paris, France, and in other parts of the world, not necessarily on the same dates. But I had sculpted these very strange forms out of Ganoderma lucidum and hemp, and with some brand nutrients and things like that. So I would sculpt them and then let them sit for a while so they would grow or fruit, or, you know, I'd keep them alive as much as I possibly could without them drying out. And the concept was for the evening of Nuit Blanche, we would plug these into 6 different synthesizers and have like a big mushroom rave kind of party going on.
And when it came time to take down the show, Tosca was out of the country, so that task fell to me. And they actually grew into the wall. It was really quite incredible.
So another aspect, I think you can hear me, for Nuit Blanche is we had some slime mold video happening that the mycelium were also controlling. But like slime mold, sometimes mycelium doesn't want to do what you want it to do when it comes time to perform. And another collaborative project was Grow Up. Now, Grow Up happens in a historic hotel here called the Gladstone. And generally, they're very like eco-based, looking at different aspects of the climate or the environment or things like that. They do a call for artists to come in. And on 3 floors, artists get to take over rooms or sections of this hotel. It's pretty cool. considering it's a historic hotel and they want you to be very careful with the rooms, we were given a room and we brought in almost a ton of dirt to put on the floor of this hotel room to try and kind of simulate an underground environment, because of course we would have mycelium growing in there. And so I made a 3-foot, about maybe 3.5-foot sculpture out of mycelium that was more just kind of like a tower. And I had, I put doweling up inside of it to hold it up. And here what you see is I had jars in front so I could have like more of a little scientific aspect to the installation. And it's just about biomaterials and bioremediation. So I had put Pleurotus austriatus in a jar with car engine oil, like really nasty car engine oil, and it cleaned that up. Okay, I should also say that was amazing too, because the show's only a week long. So at day 3, I didn't have anything to show people anymore because the mushroom had entirely absorbed that engine oil. And then there's aniline dye, and there was plastic wrap. And I'm not saying that the mushrooms or the mycelium's consuming the plastic wrap, but from my experience with making these sculptures and covering them to keep them kind of in a humid environment, it's been easier. I hate to say it, but to use plastic wrap. And like Andrei said, I left the country, and these these sculptures that I had in the other show literally started to kind of grow into the paint in the wall. So what I found is sometimes I'd have them in these Tupperware containers, and I'd come and the plastic wrap would be gone. But what happened is the mycelium had grown around it and kind of like engulfed it. And I did reluctantly tear one sculpture apart to see, and it was like it had crumpled the saran wrap into a ball inside of it. So this is inside of that room, and people would go through this scrim. They'd have to take off their shoes or put on these little slippers to go in there because of all the dirt. And it was very cool, and everything was dark. And I promised the hotel that I would keep the mycelium covered pretty much so it wouldn't spore on anybody. But really, I was doing so people wouldn't be contaminating the mycelium. And I realized when people were going up to it, it was on this pedestal, and it started to look like they were coming to this totem and standing in front of the mycelium, goddess or something, because there were these little hand like pads, touch plates on the front, so people could hear their biosonification kind of merged with the mycelium soundscape that was being created in the room. And we had a lot of fiber optics in here too that were controlled by the mycelium. They were also supposed to kind of emulate the mycelium growing underground in the roots. And I really started recognizing here with this installation how this biosonification of fungi, like mycelium in particular, people really have quite an empathic response. We would find people in there in tears crying because they were so moved that they never consider these things alive. And we've had this too with kids that when they don't see plants moving, they think they're dead, but they hear these sounds and they can hear them, in real time. They're hearing these things happen. So these are the touch plates, very like primitive touch plates. It's just copper tape that I put down, and I have electrodes hooked up to those. And we had our bio data modules in these little containers here to be free of the dirt and things like that. And so about a week in, there was a mushroom starting to, like, it was fruiting out the top of the bag. And then in 2019, I was very lucky, and I received a residency at MoCA, Toronto, which is like the Museum of Contemporary Art here. And it was in partnership with the Ontario Science Centre. And so my project, at the end of this 3-month residency, artists were asked to create an installation that would be installed at the Ontario Science Centre. And so I made the Mycelium Martian Dome, which was an 8.5 feet tall by about 16.5 feet wide. And the concept was that all the negative spaces would have mycelium like panels, or, and I'd be able to try growing some mycelium literally within the panel. But also the Martian aspect would be a living, the alien, I'll say, was the mycelium inside the dome would be creating like a soundscape. So people could come in and interact with that and learn more about biosonification and a little bit more about, again, Ganoderma lucidum. And pretty much I go with Ganoderma lucidum because out of all the fungi I've listened to so far, it's the most musical, if you will. Like it's always very melodic, where I find Pleurotus austriatus is great, but it's hyperactive all the time. It seems like from pink oysters to blue oysters. And the Ganoderma has more, I don't know what to call it, really.
Over time, the more you listen to it, under the right circumstances, you can hear sort of like periodic repeating of patterns. It's very good for that.
Yeah. So, and here's a little video I'll play for you of the mycelium Martian dome, and there's some mushroom music happening here. So something that was really, to my total surprise, is after this was up for a while, I was contacted by Dr. Lynn Rothschilds from NASA Ames Research Facility, and because she's been researching mycelium off-planet, and they're working with Ganoderma lucidum. And the concept of bringing that to Mars to grow structures. And so what she was interested in, I mean, trust me, I was floored that I'm like, NASA, this is, wow. So what they're doing is, you've probably read about it, like to be able to use possibly the dirt or whatever that, they find there on Mars, somehow turn that into a filament, like a substrate that can be a 3D filament, so they can, make these structures there. But they want to seed parts of them with mycelium because the Ganoderma lucidum has properties that can, like the melanin potential that it has, so it can filter certain radiation, that it grows really fast, and things like that. So she wanted to cite my work, mainly because I'm part of the public. And so if they can show, NASA and the government that look, these inspirations are out there. People are thinking of these things. And so she contacted me again last year because they weren't funded, but then I heard from her again, like maybe actually 3 weeks ago, and they did get funding from this administration. So they're entering phase 2. And phase 2, they're really looking at how, of course, when they take the mycelium there, or the spore, and they start it, how can they then desiccate it? Or, so they don't have things sporing all over the place on Mars. But that's going to be really interesting. So I think they're going to start, first things they're going to start trying to do will be on the moon or something like that. But it's really interesting research that they're conducting with mushrooms. And then one of the last really great things I think that I got to do pre-pandemic and everything shutting down was I won this environmental award from Big C in Australia. And I got to go to Australia for 2 months and work with botanists and mycologists there. And this was actually, this Ganoderma was the first thing I saw on this bushwalk that this person took me down. We were going, like, it was really interesting because we were way up in the Blue Mountains, and we would then travel down within these mountains to these rainforests. And over here, there's the Wallamai pine, and the Wallamai pine is this prehistoric pine that it looks like somebody put Cocoa Puffs all over the tree for bark. Like the trees, I don't know if you ever get a chance to go to Australia, if you haven't been there, flora and fauna there are just wild. Like they're wow. But unfortunately, I was there during the wrong time of year too, to really be looking for a lot of mushrooms. And it was right before, unfortunately, like all those horrible fires that happened. So it was really, really dry season there. So I did see the Ganoderma, and there were a couple rainfalls where these strange sponge mushrooms, nobody knew what they were. They were coming out of the trees, and they looked like sponge. They were strange. So that was an incredible thing. And so more recently this year, I have the Forest Undersound, which is up right now. I know that's a lot to read. I don't expect you to read it all. But so Forest Undersound is like kind of, inviting people to think about sentience of fungi and like, are they aware that they're fungi? I don't know. Are they aware of their surroundings? Are they aware of us being around? So I had these cases made, and inside here you can see what I did is cardboard culture. So I started some oyster mushrooms just in cardboard, rolled it up. The cardboard was entirely cultivated, and then I have in here a ton of substrate that I put together of hardwood, just a different mix of, I have some friends that are woodworkers that helped actually with the mycelium Martian dome wood that have given me a lot of their sawdust and things like that, and some hemp and stuff. And it's hooked up to synthesizers. So here it is again from that same, like, this is maybe 2 days in. And then there's another one with native plants of Ontario. So this soundscape is being created. There's also transducer mics, or not mics, sorry, like speakers, transducers that are on another pedestal. So people that are either deaf or hard of hearing can go and hold these pedestals or put their hands on them, and they can feel the sounds coming from the mycelium. And so here is some sound, and you'll also see the case and what it looked like just recently. Uh-oh, it's fruiting. So this is what happened. So I get this kind of this email from the museum that the mushrooms, something's happening with the case. So this was unexpected because the museum made the cases for me, and you know they're plexiglass, so you use this adhesive that melts the plexiglass to itself. And then on top of that, we siliconed the entire case. So I figured, well, yeah, of course the mushrooms are going to, you know, the mycelium will fruit and we'll have fruiting bodies in there and you'll hear that. But I did not think at all that somehow a mushroom would find a hole or some maybe ate through. I don't know. We don't know. Because of course during we're in restrictions restrictive measures here still, and this went up in January, so at some point I guess in April, it's been covered because the museum's been closed, but they still have their lights on and people come and check them out and stuff like that, that are the work people that work there. And it's a good thing because the guy saw these and he freaked out. But I couldn't get anybody to cut them and eat them because they weren't sure if I was telling them the truth or not, that they're gourmet mushrooms. So I had to go in and rescue the case and put in the plant case for now and figure out, how did you guys escape? But yeah. And so another biosonification thing that's being worked on, but this is going to be more with analog instruments. So using the biosonification modules, because they output MIDI, like MIDI notes and controls, they detect fluctuations in conductivity between 1,000 to 100,000th of a second. And that gets translated into these MIDI notes and controls. I'm going to have them like hitting like little percussive instruments and chimes and things like that. So it'll be like this mycorrhizal rhythm machine of some sort. I'm pretty excited about that. And a pretty big project that actually it was started last year, but it's still in its R&D phase, is symbiosis dysbiosis. And this was really initiated, it's my concept, but the initiation came from the Goethe Institute Montreal in having like a big support behind this. And so it's creating a boreal forest and Canadian coastal rainforest in virtual reality through photogrammetry. And we're turning these into point clouds. And so right now we have some, you know, great bracket mushroom point clouds and things, and we're bringing the biodata from living mycelium into the virtual space, and people can go within this virtual space and interact and kind of get, it's about impact in forest environments and how we impact them, but microbiome, like what we leave behind, what we take with us. And so there's a lot of work with a lot of different people involved in realizing, you know, all these microbial things in the fungi. And something that will be happening sooner is a maze, Berlin. And this happens online. It also happens in Berlin if Berlin, you know, were open, but they're taking everything online this year. And this is similar in that it's going to be in VR. So right now I'm working with this incredible team that is located in South Africa, and some people are in Montreal, Canada, and I'm doing my part here. So we are bringing living mycelium biodata into VR chat, and a whole world environment is being created right now in this virtual space. And I've also figured out how to bring touch. So during the course of this festival, which is July 21st to July 24th, so if you have headsets, if you have a Quest, get, or if you don't, go get one. It's going to be super cool. Or if you have, you know, any kind of Steam VR capabilities, you'll also be able to visit it through like 2D from a desktop computer. And we're bringing also the touch from people that'll be in the virtual space, wherever they are in the world, to the living mycelium that will be here with me. And that's being done through haptic controllers that we can connect to these virtual spaces. And so we were doing some live test things. Maybe I'll play a little bit of that for you. Okay, so it's going to be the live performance will be the mycelium biosonification, and I'll be playing that here in, well, oops, here in, sorry about that, here in the physical world, and also people will be able to see it and hear it in the virtual. And yeah, I'll be sharing, like, on my social media, a lot of pictures and things and behind the scenes.
So in the music you're about to hear, we'll start just where you'll hear the mycelium just doing its thing. So far from the specimen we have right now, mainly what we've been hearing has been more rhythmic and not so much like variation of pitch kind of thing. But in a lot of what we do, we do what we call non-human collaboration. So sometimes when we're looking for a source of inspiration, we will connect some mycelium, we will find some sounds, some voices for it, or we'll hook it up to control parameters to control the opening and closing of like a frequency cutoff filter, or to influence a clock timer or something like that. And we'll just sort of see what it does, and then from there we'll sort of augment with our own thing. So some things we do, like on SoundCloud, are pure 100% mycelium just doing its thing, and then some things like we're about to demonstrate will be letting it do its thing, and then us playing a few notes here and there just to sort of perhaps round it out. I'm not exactly sure what's quite going to happen, so that's a little bit of the adventure.
So I'm going to stop the screen share, and I will start up our video. So we're going to show you where the mushrooms are. So yeah, you can see, I think you can see that bin over there. So there's a lot of Ganoderma lucidum growing in there. I don't know if we can hold it up. Mainly what you see is a lot of condensation and stuff like that. And so that's running into, these are what our biodata boards look like. Can you see that? Very simple. Here, hold on. So you can see there's like an Atmega You know, for those of you that know Arduino, there's an app mega chip here, 555 timer. The electrodes go in there. LEDs give you a little light show. And also, you know, depending on how you have it programmed, this is a clear one. Here's, oh, I don't know what happened there. Sorry. Or sometimes, you know, they're rainbow or whatever, so you can kind of see what note it's hitting, because you can always, you know, change the scale. You could make up your own scales and things like that. So, okay, we're going to mute this and fire up the mushroom.
Yeah, so there might be a little bit of, there'll just be a couple of moments of quiet as we just check things before we hit our sound. So what you're hearing right now, the three different parts that are playing, the sort of lower bass part, the sort of chirpy bit, and then the long drums, that's all the mycelium controlling everything. We're not actually, other than just fading things in, we're not actually touching anything. So now we're going to just get a little bit collaborative, just to give you a little bit of a sense of our working process. Okay, there we go. And yeah, Tosca, if you just want to hold that up, the board. So this board right here, you can see the LEDs flashing, and that's sort of showing all of the activity that's coming from the mycelium. So I think we're now at a point where we can take questions, if there's any questions.
Wow, that was incredible. Yeah, we've got.
Thanks. You're all blue.
We have a few questions in the chat here. So a little while ago, someone asked, where can we sign up for your Amaze performance?
Oh, okay. So, well, that information isn't out yet. Actually, tomorrow I'll be sending them a lot of images that earlier today went into the world that's still being created and took a lot of shots, so they can use those for PR. So I believe they are Amaze Festival Berlin is on. Gosh, I think they're everywhere on social media. Like, if you are, they're in Facebook, Instagram, Discord, Slack. But what I could do is I could share that link with Garrett and Steven, and maybe, you guys could spread it around, because definitely we'll be sharing it, because I know for the performance, it's going to be a limited number of people that will be able to go into the world, so the world doesn't, VR and can crash sometimes if there's over so many people. So I think they're going to limit it to probably 30 people being able to come in, but it will be live streaming too. So yeah, I will share that link for sure. Oh, thanks. Yeah, for sharing that. But once I have a registration link, that will definitely be up on all my social media anyways. I'll be sharing that quite a bit.
Awesome.
I see a bunch of questions in the chat that I think I could address fairly quickly.
Sweet.
Thank you for the comment about totally being able to do yoga to this. And just as a note, there's lots of things on our SoundCloud, as well as the Nanotopia channel on YouTube. Really, with COVID, we actually got into a whole bunch of different sort of like live music events online. So in a way, that the last year or so has actually been very good for us creatively in that sense. Do they make different types of music when they can hear themselves and when the speakers are in a different room so they can't hear themselves? One thing that was definitely really, really interesting was I being around Tosca and all these things. I've sort of have a sense of just sort of seeing the growth cycles and how long certain things take. But when we did the Nuit Blanche performance, we had a very massive sound system with incredibly large subwoofers in the room, and I think it's just it's not very well, it's just my observation, but I don't know if it's connected. But I think there might be something with the low frequencies that it was stimulated by it, because the next day, just the amount of growth overnight was really, really astounding. We were both really surprised by it. But yeah, do they sort of respond? I think so, because, for example, it's interesting. We see this as a collaborator. So if you're collaborating with another musician, you don't sort of knock on your collaborator's head or anything. So we're fully aware that if we wander over to that container and we give it a shake, we will get a sudden flurry of extra activity. So definitely, when there's music in the room and it's loud enough, it will start to become almost like a kind of a feedback. Maybe not unlike when you would play like a vinyl record on a turntable and you turn up loud enough, it starts to feedback. So I think definitely there is a different reaction. Do different mushrooms make different sounds? Yeah. I think the key thing is we're quantizing data to musical notes, notes on off pitch values, even like quantization of what scale, things like that. So that's a little bit interpretive on our part. So not so much different sound, but a different sense of pattern, a different sense of rhythm. we did actually at one point have, at one show we did, had some mycelial culture that unfortunately was contaminated by slime mold. Slime mold sounds like really bad jazz. We really actually have to work exceptionally at trying to quantize it, because it can be, if you imagine a piano keyboard, it can be the very lowest notes to the very highest notes in just like a split second.
Yeah, and like tonal, it was very much like these tonal clusters. And even though I clean the electrodes that I was using at the time really, really well with, ethanol, whatever, 70% isopropyl and stuff like that, I wasn't aware that there was a little left. And so the evening of listening to the mycelium separate from the physarum, it had a certain pattern happening. It was really beautiful. Not so much the slime mold. Then 3 days later, when I checked on the mycelium, I saw there was a ring of slime mold around it. I, at that time, wasn't aware that they're like mortal enemies. And the sound then that was coming from the mycelium, even using, the same parameters, same synth voice, it sounded totally different. It sounded very frenetic, is like the best way to put it. And a scientist that I know that works with slime mold exclusively said you probably heard a battle cry because they're mortal enemies, because the slime mold was devouring the mycelium. And I felt terrible. So we buried it in the backyard in hopes that, the mycelium would fruit and be able to get away by spore, and maybe the slime mold would find something more interesting to go and attack. I really, growing these for this long now and listening, like translating these this conductivity into sound, it's like I'm hearing them. So they're now, I feel very close to the mycelium.
Okay, so I'm going to answer a couple of questions at once. Is there a certain megahertz range? So if we think about, just to reiterate what Tosca mentioned earlier, all living things are electrically conductive, and just as a process of being a living biological entity, if you measure changes of conductivity to something, its own life processes will cause a fluctuation. For humans, we can do like an EEG or something, but in the case of mycelium, they don't have, there's no heartbeat, so something that's sort of designed for that range of detection obviously won't detect anything. Our circuit is using a 555 timer chip, and the way it's sort of working is that when a change of state is registered anywhere between 1,000th and 100,000th of a second, it will create a pulse, and then those series of pulses are then quantized further. So technically, megahertz. If I'm correct in my abbreviations, 100,000, that would be 1 megahertz, I guess. So that's sort of the upward range that we're actually measuring. To the other question, I wonder what the different frequency is of a stressed mushroom versus a healthy, thriving one. There's certain things we have noticed, like for example, we have a UV flashlight, and when we have just seen what has happened with it, it can cause the pitch to go very, very high. Definitely when mycelium was being attacked by the slime mold, it was much more erratic. Definitely though, we lack, I guess in a way, proper controls for laboratory type of experimentation. But I think what's very important for what we're doing and what we've done with their shows though is just getting people just to think about perhaps other forms of sentience, or just really thinking beyond the ourselves as living organisms. That things beneath our feet are very much alive.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, is there another question? Sorry. Oh, yes, conductivity.
Yeah, I think I did. I think I did answer the second to last question. Yeah. So we are measuring conductivity. So it is voltage. It's a fairly low voltage measurement. we connect either sometimes with what do you call those pads?
Sometimes we use what's called TENS electrodes. So, like an electrode that you would have put on you in a hospital, or, they're similar how they might, hook up for brain waves for EEG or EKG. Another thing I've done is I'll make different types of wire electrodes, like either you can use like high carat gold, you can use copper, you can use silver, fine silver. Like with the copper, the mushrooms start breaking them down. I've had some, even the silicone, I have pictures up on one of our YouTube streams where the mushroom's completely grown over. If I leave the electrodes in there for more than a couple days, they just will completely cultivate over that silicone and start fruiting over it. It looks really great, but I don't pull. Those are some toast electrodes then. And some wire ones recently that I put in some Ganoderma that's right behind me. I cannot get them out of it at all. Like, I don't know what's gone on. So it's interesting to me. I think that they start bioremediating the copper, because I've had that happen with cyanotypes and putting some pink oyster mushrooms like to do spore prints, and it just absorbed the cyan, the copper. And so I'm just going to grab this.
Can I answer one of the questions, Mina? Yeah, so do they read minds? Actually, I guess really some of the first work with connecting any sort of like electrical measurement devices to living matter was a former polygraph specialist for the FBI, Cleve Baxter, who famously connected a lie detector to a house plant. And he had this idea to go to the other room, grab some matches, come back and see what would happen if he burned the plant. Apocryphally, as he was coming back, it started reacting. However, there was no controls on anything that he did, and none of his observations have ever been repeatable. So we don't really support that necessarily. However, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things like proximity. What's the word I'm looking for? Capacitance. Different kinds of field effects. We did one show where we had some amazing sort of like music happening. The moment one person came into the room, like just entered the doorway, silence, absolute silence. They came up, they looked, they didn't understand it, and we were perplexed. We were checking our battery's still good, everything.
Was this at Mocha?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then
there were a lot of people there.
Yeah, and then the moment they left, it was like, boop, yeah. Immediately. So there's definitely a lot of things that we're not aware of, and we think it's very exciting, but we don't want to jump to any conclusions necessarily.
Andrei's very hesitant to say anything because there might be some scientists in the house. But yeah, but no, yeah, legitimately, we speculate and we think about these things a lot, and a lot of people that I hang out with are scientists and things like that, and they're completely blown away. And always, I work sometimes with people at Gutmann Laboratory of, they're like a genomics lab. And they're always like, let's grow some bacteria on a petri dish. And we're just thinking of layering it thick enough to where we're actually sonifying the bacteria, not the agar or something. But people have asked us, do things have to be wet because it's conductivity? But we have hooked up to entirely dry mycelium, like when I was growing those panels. And there was a lot of information coming through with that too. And yes, sometimes we do hit record like immediately because it can be really amazing what's happening. But yeah, sometimes what we'll do, if I'm just doing the raw mycelium sounds just straight through an iPad, like if I'm, outside somewhere collecting this, I usually bring it in through, I think it's called MIDI Rec is the app, and it's just recording the straight MIDI. And I collect all that, and I'll just upload that like to the SoundCloud. So the Nanotopia SoundCloud, there's Midnight Mushroom Music, and there's a lot of recordings in there. And towards maybe 2019 and stuff, I started messing around with AI with the fungi too, and having it interpret the sounds, and then back to the mushroom, like kind of playing it like somebody had asked in one of the questions, kind of does it react to the sounds? And so I've shared some of that. But yeah, usually with the synthesizer, like this whole Eurorack thing, we have to at least tune, like we're trying to tune to something, because like Andre said, if the mushroom is really active, and I'm calling it mushroom, if the mycelium is really active, it could go way up in pitch, and we try not to do that so there's no ear bleeds happening. So we will sometimes try to quantize our synthesizers that we know we're going to play, but we try to just let the mycelium always do its thing. So especially when we're sharing with people, so they can really get a better sense of the mushroom.
And to the question, yeah, about consistency, we see a lot more consistency the larger the sample is. So that's what's a bit of a challenge sometimes when we're working from very small culture, just within our apartment. When we had the very large panels grown for the Martian dome, they were incredibly reactive, but they were about 2 inches thick. Imagine, yeah, 2 inches thick, and imagine a triangle with 4 foot like sides, 5 by 5 by 5. Yeah, okay. So anyway, so they were incredibly reactive, and reactive very, very consistently.
Yeah. So yeah, go and listen to some mushrooms. No, it's really, I really love it, and being able to have the ability to go out on forays or just explore different forests and things like that. So I'm looking forward to being able to get back out into the forest here in Ontario, because we're still in restrictive measures here. So technically, we can't go out. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'd like to say the mycelium thanks you too.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Thanks a lot.
I could listen to that for a while.
Thanks. So yeah, we do try to. We were doing it once a month for a while, where we were doing some live streams to YouTube on Saturday nights. So we usually post that. We'll have like visuals, just so if people want to trip out looking at. I create touch designer visuals that the mycelium might be controlling, and then we just play for anywhere from 20 minutes to a couple hours. We had something go for 48 hours actually.
Extremely interesting. Thank you so much. This has been most informative.
Thanks. Okay, so
I have a billion more questions too, but
feel free to email.
I'll keep it myself, probably.
Okay. Okay, but you can always email too, or I don't know. Yeah, we don't know what's It's up to you guys. So.
Yeah. But yeah, for anyone that's on this, if there's any questions that come up, later, happy to address them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I really loved it.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you all so much for presenting. It was so great to have you here tonight. Really wonderful just learning about your process and hearing some of the music that you're creating. So thanks so much. I'm seeing a lot of positive comments in the chat here. I think people really loved what you had to share.
Which is a big relief, because sometimes you just never know. Yeah, but thank you. You're a great audience. Thank you very much. Really appreciate being invited.